The Jehovah's Witnesses clearly can't help themselves. They are in the business of taking L's left and right, and this week was absolutely no exception. There were a couple of news stories that I did want to cover. One of them funny, one of them absolutely terrible. So yeah, let's get straight away into it. Hello and welcome back to the JW Thoughts channel. My name is Wally, and today I want to talk about a couple of news stories that popped up on the old JW Jehovah's Witnesses tab on my home screen. And the first one is a little bit comical, the second one is a little bit sad, but quickly before we get into it, don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel. I know it only takes 1 second and it might not seem like that big of a deal, but it literally helps keep the channel alive and growing, and it is very much appreciated. So we're going to look at a couple of clips from a Dutch talk show sort of thing. Now, it's a mix of comedy because he's making fun of the Jehovah's Witnesses, but I also find it interesting some of the audience's reaction to hearing about some of the Jehovah's Witness practices. Now, I will put a link in the description so you can just watch that entire video, because I don't want to just go through and watch it here on my channel. So I will put a link in the description. But what kind of sparked this was that there was a very incredibly well-made documentary that came out in the Netherlands about the Jehovah's Witnesses and growing up and some of their culture, and it started to get some media attention. And because of that, obviously, if stuff is in the news, they're going to talk about it. So let me just show you a couple of the clips of him talking about some of the Jehovah's Witness teachings.
Jehovah's getuigen vertelt waar ze precies van overtuigd zijn.
Nou, we zijn als Jehovah's getuigen zijn we christenen, dus we doen ons best om het voorbeeld van Jezus na te volgen en datgene wat er in de Bijbel staat.
Ja, ze volgen de Bijbel, maar ze hebben daar wel een eigen vertaling van gemaakt, omdat ze vinden dat de gangbare Bijbelvertalingen te veel beïnvloed zijn door allerlei heidense filosofieën. Bovendien zijn Jehovah's ervan overtuigd dat het einde der tijden eraan komt en dat er 144.000 mensen naar de hemel gaan om met Jezus te regeren. Ze gaan samen regeren? Wat een formatie moet dat worden? Hier beneden is het met 4 mensen al niet te doen, maar oké. Dus die mensen komen in de hemel en wat gebeurt er dan met de rest? Nou, dat werd in de jaren 70 al een keer goed uitgelegd door een jongetje in Den Haag.
Er zal allerlei plagen en zo over de wereld heersen.
Jij gelooft dat je gered zal worden?
Ja, als ik mijn best zal doen, dan zal ik wel gered worden.
En je vriendjes en je vriendinnetjes die niet van Jehovah's getuigen zijn, wat gebeurt daarmee?
Ja, er zit geen grote kans meer voor, hè. Die zullen wel doodgaan.
Die hebben pech gehad.
Ja, die hebben pech.
So quickly, this guy is speedrunning, breaking down the Jehovah's Witness practices. As he identifies here, if you say, oh yeah, we follow the Bible, but you only use your version of the Bible because you consider all the others as sort of inferior to that. Now, a Jehovah's Witness wouldn't necessarily say that. They'd be like, oh, you can find the truth in any Bible you use. But we all know that that's just a load of stinky barnacles. Now, one funny thing is the guy that was interviewed here, I think I'm right, but he was in a older Watchtower video. Yeah. And it was funny because at the time of watching it, I was like, that guy is so Dutch. Like, you could just smell the Dutch on him from a mile away. So I guess that prediction was actually right. And then we go to this interview with this little boy that's talking about, oh, what about all the people around you? Oh, well, you know, I guess they're unlucky. They're just going to die. Sorry, you weren't a Jehovah's Witness. Unlucky. And that is kind of powerful to think about when you're sitting there like, wait, here you have just a regular old child that looks at everyone around him in his school, his neighborhood, everywhere. And he just thinks, yep, bad luck, mate. You're going to die at Armageddon. Really crazy. And I'm glad that they showed this level of indoctrination. Now, check out this next clip because it really shows the empathy and compassion that normal, regular people have whenever they encounter someone adequately or like properly describing their childhood as a Jehovah's Witness.
Jehovah's, het is niet elke dag feest. Sterker nog, het is nooit feest.
Maar we hebben ook dat we bijvoorbeeld geen kerst en zo vieren. Sinterklaas niet, verjaardagen. Soms vind ik het wel jammer, want ik wil gewoon wel met carnaval, maar niet alleen om dat te vieren, maar gewoon omdat ik verkleden heel leuk vind.
En dat mag wel of niet? Dat mag ook niet, nee.
Ja, dat is zielig.
So she just wants to be a kid. wants Santa Claus, birthday parties, be able to dress up and go to a carnival. Just regular old kid stuff. But no, not if you're a Jehovah's Witness. But the audience, like, you hear it. Aww. Now, that's not the only time that you get this sort of collective, like, oh my God, this is awful from the audience. So let's look at another example that happened.
Arjen, 13. Nee, je mag bij de Jehovah's getuigen dus heel veel niet. En als je de regels overtreedt, dan krijg je straf. Dat zag ik op hun website. Daar hebben ze allemaal van dit soort educatieve tekenfilmpjes.
Dad said I'm punished.
Oh, I see. Do you remember what the Bible says? Jehovah disciplines.
Jehovah disciplines the ones he loves. I love you, Dad. If discipline is love, you must love me a whole lot.
Veel van me. Klopt, David. Heel veel.
Ja. Hier gaat het beeld op zwart, want vader gaat hierna weer even laten zien hoeveel hij precies van David houdt. Volgens mij...
Scary stuff, especially people on the outside world. You hear that almost nervous laughter because it's like, wait, is this just like basically openly saying like they just beat their children? Or, oh, you must love me a whole lot, Dad, because how much you are always punishing me. I mean, obviously, like, you can't raise kids without consequences for actions and things like that. But with Watchtower's history of using corporal punishment, not sparing the rod, it doesn't really look too good. Now, I don't want this to go on forever, so let's just look at one more clip.
Oh, je hebt hem van een vriendje. David, wie houdt er van toveren? Jehovah of Satan?
Satan?
Precies. Toveren is slecht. Daarom haat Jehovah het.
What the fuck, David? Je had spaarlok van een vriendje geleend. Die kan je niet zomaar in de kliko flikkeren, hè?
Dat ik 328 jaar oud ben, dus dat werden heel wat stokslagen.
Jeetje, maar jij hebt daar dus een tijdje gelogeerd.
The old classic Sparlock gets a little limelight here. So they show the clip, and obviously the audience is like, what in tarnation? Like, you just have to throw this thing away? It's absolutely crazy. But shout outs to Sparlock and the guy that's doing a little bit of a cosplay. Anyway, go check out the whole video. It's actually pretty funny and interesting to see how non-Jehovah's Witnesses or people that know almost nothing about Jehovah's Witnesses sort of respond when they hear these things. And this actually did bring up something that I did kind of was brewing in my brain a little bit, is a lot of times I'll hear from people and they'll say, well, we're never going to have a big impact on Watchtower because people speak out to it, but no one cares about the Jehovah's Witnesses. No one really knows. And I've probably said something very similar myself, but this kind of opened my third eye to maybe people do actually care. They just have to get their foot in the door. Because once you kind of peek behind the curtain and see like, oh, what are these Jehovah's Witnesses actually teaching? It's actually pretty interesting, and a lot of people do find it fascinating. And the thing that really stood out to me was the compassion that they have, especially for the children being raised in this organization with all of these ridiculous rules about what kind of toys you can play with, and you need to have a big old smile on your face when you're being punished by your parents all the time for breaking any of these crazy, insane rules. So it did give me a little bit of hope, because I just think when you hear that sort of compassion in people's voices and their interest and curiosity in the subject, it does make me hopeful that if we do continue and push as much as we can to bring the Jehovah's Witness teachings to the front and center, give them all of the PR that they want, but not in a good way, I think it can actually have a pretty big difference. Now, let's transition into something that is really tragic, but I think it's at least worth mentioning, and that is something that has been going on in Australia with regards to allegations made against a Jehovah's Witness elder. So let me pull up that news article and just read it right there for you. A former Jehovah's Witness elder has been committed to stand trial for R-word and sexually abusing young men on the Sunshine Coast over a 10-year period. Police arrested 62-year-old Peter Mitchelson in August 2022 and charged him with more than 50 sexual offenses. Going down here, a committal hearing at Maroochydore today heard Mr. Mitchelson allegedly used his seniority as a former congregation elder to coerce the younger men to perform sexual acts for his gratification. Police said the acts were non-consensual and made the alleged victims feel used, controlled, and lied to. So, some pretty heavy allegations against this Mr. Mitchelson. I find it absolutely despicable that things like this happen, especially when we're dealing with elders. Now, the reason that this is important to note is because the organization, no doubt, will look at this and say, well, there's always going to be a few bad apples. There's always going to be people in any position of power that are going to abuse that power. And while, yes, that is to a certain extent true, questions need to be asked about what the Jehovah's Witness as an institution, as an organization, did to background check. Did anyone respond to any claims that were being made through the years? Was Watchtower involved in any sort of judicial committee with respect to this person's actions? Because you can't separate a individual Jehovah's Witness from the congregation as a whole, especially if they're an elder, because the organization tells people that elders are there for their protection. Here is just one article that I found that should hopefully shed some light on just how important elders are to Jehovah's Witnesses and how they're really looked upon. They're held in high esteem. So this is from a 2007 Watchtower. A third reason for our willingly cooperating with the overseers is that they keep watch over us as those who will render an account. Again, they keep watch over us, so they are there for your protection. Overseers remember that they are under shepherds, serving under the heavenly shepherds, Jehovah God and Jesus Christ. Jehovah is the owner of the sheep whom he purchased with the blood of his own son, and he holds the appointed overseers accountable for the way they treat his flock, which should be with tenderness. Hence, all of us are answerable to Jehovah for the way we respond to his direction. Our obedience to the appointed elders also gives evidence of our submission to Christ, the head of the congregation. So this becomes a problem when someone has this much authority, and you, as a Jehovah's Witness child with no experience in the world, no training in how to deal with situations like this, what are you going to do when you have an elder telling you to do these inappropriate sexual gratifying things, or gratifying for him? It's commands coming from Jesus. Obeying elders is one and the same as obeying God, and you wouldn't want to disobey God, would you? Hence, all of us are answerable to Jehovah for the way we respond to his direction. You will be answerable. You'll have to answer to Jehovah if you disobey the elders. That is what's at stake here, and that's why things like this happen and continue to happen. This went on for a decade, as the article said. Now, this is the even more terrifying part. This next paragraph in 16. At times, an elder may not do things as directed by the faithful slave class and its governing body. If he continues acting this way, he will have to render an account to Jehovah, the shepherd and overseer of our souls. But any failure or mistake on the part of certain elders would not justify an insubordinate attitude on our part. Jehovah does not bless disobedience and rebellion. So even if they make a mistake, even if they're not doing the right thing, even if they're failing in their job, you still can't be insubordinate. You cannot question the arrangements of having elders there as shepherds. Jehovah would never bless someone that was disobedient to the elders that are there making mistakes. It is absolutely disgusting how much power these men have when we know for a fact at least once a year we get a case that pops up in the news where you have an elder that was abusing that power and abusing it to sexually abuse children. It needs to stop, it needs to be talked about, and these people need to be held accountable, because you can't just say you have to give absolute trust in the elders, obey their every word in their direction, and then say, oh, well, there's some bad apples amongst us. You can't have it both ways, and it terribly upsets me. If you want to read that entire article, again, I'll put a link in the description. That is the end of Wally's mailbag. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed just a little bit of update about what's been going on in the week with the Jehovah's Witnesses. With all that being said, stay safe, be kind, and show yourself the same kindness that you show to others.